So I'm starting to check the sound and the video. Can you just write in the chat if you can hear me and see me? There is a time lag here. I'm aware of that. Can anybody see me and hear me? Just write in the chat if you can. Yes, I can hear you and see you. Thank you, Anya. Lovely. Wonderful. And there are not many shadows behind me, so I think the lighting is good. Hello from Ohio, USA. Welcome, Margaret. Is that Lorraine? I'm not sure. There's fluff on the floor. Yes, lovely. Hello, Karen from the USA. Welcome. We have still a few minutes. Very good to see you. Yes, you too. We have about 7 minutes. Susan from Denmark. Hey, we have 7 minutes before we start, so I'll bring out my spindle. We have had a lovely day here in Stockholm, Sweden today. I've been doing lots of stuff in the allotment and in the garden. Hi from Denmark. Love Finull, but always in doubt about whether it is the same as Finn. We'll talk about that. Just find the fine places tend to be short since shorn twice per year. Hey Cecilia. Hey Sarah. We'll talk about that during the webinar, Karen. And hopefully you'll get a clearer picture. So thank you for writing your question in advance. If I forget it, just remind me. We have 14 people so far. If you just joined, please state your name and where you're from in the chat. We have 5 minutes before the webinar starts. And as always, I can't decide anything over the tech goddesses, so anything can happen tech-wise. There is a high pressure on these kinds of social media, so things can go wrong, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. Hi, Judith. Lovely to see you. From the Netherlands, perhaps? Belgium? Katrin, Berlin. Willkommen. Jag är med nu. Hej Gunvar. Buongiorno, Anna, from Italy. Beautiful shawl scarf, thank you. Judith from the Netherlands, yes. I'm trying to remember the designer of the shawl, but I can't. But it's my handspun yarn. It's a D-stash shawl. I just realized that my hands are sweaty. So the wool gets stuck in the palm of my hand. Three minutes before the webinar starts, and there are 25 people here. Hej Sofia! Catherine in Kent, UK. Welcome Catherine. Enköping. Titti, hej Titti, vad roligt att du är här. P something. I'm not sure I can pronounce your last name, but hello from the Netherlands. Welcome. Just starting in a minute. 30 people, 31. Lisa på Ekerö. Hej hej! Hey Helene! It's 5 p.m. Welcome to this live breed study webinar on Swedish Finull, Finull wool. I'm Josefin Waltin. I'm thrilled that so many people are here from different parts of the world. We have the US, we have Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, Italy, Germany, Denmark, the UK. I'm sure I forgot something. But we're covering quite a part of the world. I think there were over 200 people registering for the webinar, so I'm really happy about that. And it's so good to see you, to be able to have this connection to you in these webinars. Most of you have introduced yourselves in the chat. If you're coming late, please just join in, write where you're from if you want to. There is a time lag in this live stream, and perhaps especially now when there's a high pressure on these kinds of social media during the corona crisis. So just be aware of that. And as I said before we started, anything can happen tech-wise. Last time things just stopped after about 10 minutes. So things can happen that we can't really do much about, but just keep your fingers crossed that we'll be able to do this webinar all the way through. I'm Josephine Valtin. I'm a spinner. I started spinning 8 years ago, and I started teaching spinning 4 years ago. On my first spinning lesson, I didn't know anything about spinning before. I got a box of wool and a spindle. And that is how I learned how to spin. That is my approach to spinning still today. It's how I want to learn about wool. It's how I want to get to know the wool and find its main characteristics, its superpowers to produce a yarn that will let these superpowers shine. So working from a fleece, a raw, dirty, poopy fleece is how I get to know it and find the best qualities of that particular fleece. Before we move on, I would like to say a big thank you to my patrons. Patreon.com is a membership site for creators where followers can contribute with a monthly fee to the creators that they want to support. In exchange, they get exclusive content on my Patreon page. Patrons can get a Q&A every month and previews of upcoming videos or discounts on my courses. Highlands of Scotland, hello Terry. And these contributions are very important to the business that I have. And for the money that I've gotten from my patrons, I've been able to buy a very good studio light and microphones, and also I've been able to pay a captioning service to help me caption my videos. So a big thank you to all my patrons. If you want to become a patron, check in patreon.com and search for my name. But things that are free now will be free in the future. So even though these contributions from my patrons make these kinds of events like webinars possible at all, they are still free. So Michigan, USA, enjoyed your articles in Spinoff. Your sweater pattern is beautiful. Thank you. Linnea from Norway. Hey. Thank you. C-Wise. Eleonora, hi from Suffolk. Hi, Eleonora. This is my 6th breed study webinar. I started over a year ago with Gotland wool, and then I went on to Gypte wool. In September, I think, I did Dalapels wool. In December, Värmland wool, and now this year in March, I did Jämtland wool. And today we're looking closer at Swedish Finull Finull. What's going to happen today is that we're going to look just generally at the breed. We're going to look at the wool characteristics and how I prepare, spin, and use Finull wool, Swedish fine wool. I have one camera in front of me, and so I'm not able to do any fancy close-ups. If you want to see close-ups, get back to my blog post I did last Saturday to see if you want to see more details. There is, as you can see, as you have used the chat to the left, to the right in your screen, and you can ask questions there. If you do ask questions during the webinar, please write a question in capital letters so that I can see the difference between comments and questions. And towards the end of the webinar, there will be a Q&A, so I can focus on the chat and the questions. Lovely. So grab your spinning, your knitting, what have you, and let's have ourselves a webinar about Swedish fine wool, Finull wool. So Finull sheep, Swedish fine wool sheep, is one of the Swedish land races. And so to tell the history of Finull sheep, I need to go into the history of the Swedish land races in general. Before the beginning of the 16th century, the only sheep in Sweden were the different land races, and they had different kinds of wool, both long, strong, and shiny, and finer, softer undercoat. The outer coat was long and strong fibers, and these were most probably from the North European short-tailed sheep. The farmers in Sweden used these different landrace sheep fleeces for rough textiles and rugs. Perhaps you've heard of the rya rugs, corset textiles, and vadmal textiles. The king of Sweden at this time, Gustav Vasa, he thought that the nobilities needed finer wool, so Sweden needed to produce a finer textiles from finer breeds, so that the nobilities could have the textiles they would be entitled to. So he imported rumpefår, that would be translated into bum sheep. That would be the fat-tailed sheep from the UK, Germany, and also later Spain. Finer fibered sheep breeds. And he wanted to get rid of the harmful Swedish sheep. So he installed royal sheep farms with these imported breeds to use in a Swedish textile production. But the landrace rams didn't really care who the ewe was, so there was lots of cross breeding during these around at least 300 years. In the 1870s was the peak of Swedish sheep farming. There were around 1.6 million sheep. And just not so many decades later, in 1914, there were 600,000 sheep. During the Industrial Revolution, there was a decrease in sheep farming in Sweden because we imported lots of cheap wool to have in the textile industry, and also cotton. After the pasteurization method had been invented, we also got rid of lots of sheep to use to have cows on the pastures instead. As I said, lots of these new imported sheep were crossed with the Swedish land races, and there is a possibility that, for example, the Spanish Merino was crossed with the Swedish land races. During the First World War, there was an increase in the demand for Swedish wool for uniforms for the military, but also this was during what we call the National Romantic era, a very nationalistic period in Sweden and in all of Europe. And we wanted to get back to the traditional techniques and traditional cultural things like crafting. And in the museums in Sweden, they saw these lustrous textiles that the farmers had made, that I spoke about in the beginning. And they couldn't really find the same shine in the contemporary sheep breeds in Sweden. So they realized that there must be some sheep breed that had this shine, and they went to look for the Swedish land races. They did find isolated flocks in different parts of Sweden, And I think this was when they started to register different wool types of the Swedish land races. Wool types like fine wool, Finull, that is not the breed, but the wool type, a fine undercoat crimpy wool. Another wool type was Rya wool, the long, lustrous, coarse wool that had been used for the Rya rugs, and also what you could translate into pelt wool or fur wool, like the kind that Gotland wool is, that would be very suitable for skins. And during this nationalistic era, they also wanted to find the old colors, the natural colored sheep. Most of the Swedish land races were white, and the fur sheep were in different shades of gray. So in 1938, Finnish landrace sheep were imported to Sweden to cross with a finer fibered sheep. During World War II, there was first an increase in demand for wool because we couldn't import wool from Europe. But then there was a decrease after the war because we needed sheep meat breeds instead of these wool breeds. The registration of different wool types continued, and in the 1980s, the Swedish Fine Wool Association was founded to protect the Swedish fine wool breed, Finull sheep. Finull sheep today is quite a fertile breed. They can get between 2 and 5 lambs. The ewes weigh 50 to 70 kilos, and the rams 80 to 100 kilos. There are statistics, but it's a bit difficult to see the whole picture. If you look at the Swedish Sheep Breeders Association's statistics, they say that in 2019 there were 2,115 breeding ewes in 161 flocks. But there are lots of flocks that are not registered in the Swedish Sheep Breeders Association. And Finull sheep are also used to quite a large extent in crossing with other breeds. The most common cross is Finull Texel, which is a meat breed. This cross is called Svea sheep. Svea is an old name for a part of Sweden. Another cross is with Gotland sheep, East Frisian milk sheep, and recently I think there is a cross with Dorset sheep, and this cross is called Finull Dorset. One of my favorite crosses is Finull Rya sheep. And someone mentioned my sweater pattern in the chat, and that the wool for that sweater is a cross between Rya and Finull wool. Most of the Finull sheep are white, about 61%, according to the statistics I've seen in the Swedish Sheep Breeders Association. 23% black and 17% brown. And if you look at the brown and the black and white, there is a slight difference between them, because traditionally there were only black and white Finull sheep, but since they wanted to have a wider spectrum of colors in the beginning of the 20th century, they crossed with Finn sheep, Finnish landrace. So the brown Finull sheep are more related to the Finnish landrace than the white and the black, and you can see it in the quality of the wool. It's a bit, the brown wool is a bit coarser than the white and black, and the brown Finull sheep also have wool on their heads, which the white and black don't. So there was a question in the beginning about what Finull and Finn sheep are, but they have similarities. They are related, but way back. There have been imports of Finull of Finn sheep after 1938 as well, but it's over 30 years ago since the last import, as far as I know. So there is a kinship, but quite distant. So Finull wool has a lovely shine. I'm not sure if you can see it in this picture, but I think has an unusual shine for a wool that has this high amount of crimp. And I should say also that Finull wool is one of 3 Swedish wool breeds. All the other breeds in Sweden are not. So some are bred for the skins, some are bred for the genetic diversity, but 3 breeds in Sweden are bred for the wool, and it's Finull, Swedish fine wool, it's Rya, and it's the breed we talked about last time, Jämtland wool. And since Finull wool is Finull sheep is a wool breed, there are standards and statistics about the wool. The micron count is supposed to be between 20 and 30 microns. I think it is towards the lower part of that spectrum. And there is a parameter called shine, and it's around 4 on a scale of 1 to 5. I'm not sure what this scale is about, but it's what it says. The crimp has a very special definition. The crimp in Finull wool is around 8 crimps per 3 centimeters. So 8 crimps in 3 centimeters of the staple length. These staples are quite short, between 5 and 9 centimeters for a fleece that is shorn twice, a sheep that is shorn twice a year. And when I want to find the superpowers of Finull wool, I definitely choose the softness and the shine and the high crimp count. This is a wool that, to me, is the perfect candidate for a woolen spun yarn. And I have seen Finull wool as a whole year's fleece. I think once or perhaps twice. They are, of course, longer, but since this wool is so fine, it's quite rare. Usually it breaks or felts if it's shorn more seldom. So most Finull wool is shorn twice a year. I told you in the beginning that when I first met spinning, it was with a box of wool and a spindle, and that box contained Swedish fine wool Finull. So this is my home wool. It's the wool that I feel the most safe and comfortable with. Finull sheep is the sheep I measure any sheep to, and I feel very much at home with Finull wool. Finull wool is very popular among both hand spinners and spinning mills. both, and the spinning mills use Finull wool both for the Finull wool in itself to produce Finull yarns, but also to mix with other breeds. If you were on the Gotland webinar, I told you that Gotland wool is too slippery for the spinning mills. They just slip through the carding machines and the spinning machines, but mixed with around 25% Finull, they can produce a Gotland yarn that also works in the machines. So there is a high demand for Swedish Finull. This wool comes from Karin, a sheep that she's a ewe right now, but her lamb's wool won, I think it was a gold medal in the Swedish Fleece Championships of 2017. And she comes from a farm called Glada Fåret, which means happy sheep. And the shepherdess at this farm, she I think she focuses a lot on the wool in her breeding program, so she has a lovely Finull wool. Yes. Are you still with me? Lovely, says Titti Strömne. I'm the proud owner of Karin. Yes, lovely. As I said, Finull wool is, to me, the perfect candidate for woolen spinning and carding rolags. So that is what I do with Swedish Finull. And as you can see, on the staples, they are quite fine. The staples are fine. And of course, the fibers are fine. And when the staples are fine, the tips are even finer, and they can get brittle and break. So I need to take that into consideration when I prepare the wool. If you've been on these webinars before, you know that I don't put any unteased wool on my hand cards. I always tease my wool first. And I use one of 3 different methods to do that. One is, of course, using no tools at all to tease. I just pull the fiber perpendicular to the direction of the staple and tease. Oh, this is lovely if you just want to spend some time with the wool in your hands and get to know it better, or if you don't have tools at all, or if you don't have tools with you where you are. So this is a lovely way to tease Finull wool. Another way that you've seen me use before is to use hand combs, which I'm not doing right now, but I do it. It's my favorite way of teasing because I can do it quite fast and efficiently. But what I'm using for Finull is my flick card. This is from Louet, and you can also use dog brush or cat brush. I have used several. They are all broken, but this stays complete, and I really like this one. So the reason why I use my flick card for Finull locks is that if the tips are brittle and break, they will break and stay in the flick card instead of coming along to the carding and the roll lag, and end up as naps in my yarn. So I just I have a leather patch to protect my trousers, and I just very gently open up the locks, turn it around, take the root part, done. And if there are brittle tips, or if it's just gunk or something stuck in the tip, it will break and stay in the flick card, so that I get a better quality on the yarn that I spin. So, teased locks from Finull wool. And here is the waist. There's a broken tip that I would otherwise have had in my yarn. So this is the waist. And I will make a rowlag out of this, and I've prepared some here. Terry is flicking sheaviot locks as she watches. Lovely. I charge my card with the teased wool. I just pull it onto the card until it doesn't stick anymore. Careful not to overcharge it. I always leave a frame around the wool empty, because when I card this, it will fluff up, and it will move outwards. And if I charge all the way out to the end of the teeth, it will move outside of the carding pad, and the wool that is outside of the carding pad will not be carded, so it will be an uneven rowlag. So I card in 3 passes, and I usually, just to have a number to follow, to count, I do 6 strokes for each pass. So 1, very gentle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The third pass. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'll make a rowlag. I push the handle against my thigh, and I put my free hand, the back of my free hand, on the bat, and lift the wool carefully with my free card. Push the wool down, lift, push, lift, push, push, lift, push, lift. And then I take the whole rowlag and do another roll between the cards, and get a lovely, fluffy, even rowlag. So even though it can feel a bit fiddly with these very thin staples, and that you need to flick them almost individually, it is worth it, because you get a lovely rowlag. I'll just check the chat to see if I've missed anything. Oh, Titi says Karin, this sheep is still in her flock, and she had 2 lambs this year. Lovely. And Catherine says, this is very good to know. I had this in otherwise lovely Clun forest and was unsure what to do. You mean about the tips breaking, or the tips being brittle? Question from Linnea. Do you use a finer handcard or do you use a normal handcard? Yes, good question. These are the only handcards, the only modern handcards I have, and these are finer. These are around 108 TPI, that's teeth per square inch. Yes, says Catherine, the tip's breaking. Yes, good. Glad I could help. So, spinning. I spin Finull wool with my spinning wheel, which there is no room for here, and you wouldn't be able to see what I was doing anyway, or my support spindle, or a Navajo spindle. So I'll just spin a little on my supported spindle, sort of a woolen yarn. Since the fibers are quite short, I need to have a higher twist than I'm used to. So I'll break that there. And I'll ply it on the fly to get, it's not a 3-ply, it's a chain ply, but it has 3 threads to make a lovely round yarn. Oops. So this is chain plying, or ply on the fly on a supported spindle. I spin a portion, and then I chain ply that until there's no singles left, and then I make a new single and ply that into chain ply. And this is a lovely supported spindle from Björn Pick, my private, not private, but my at least my favorite spindle maker from Sweden. He is coming with a selection of spindles this week, because I'm making a course next week. I need his spindles for that. So I'll finish this. So that was a chain ply from a supported spindle. I'll show it to you in a minute. Question from Linnea. You sometimes use a distaff. Would you use that with this wool, or is it too short fibered? And if yes, how would you dress the distaff? It's magic to see you chain play. Thank you. I would use a distaff if I were using an in-hand spindle, and that I'm not doing that today. But I could definitely dress it, and I would card not Rolex but bats and dress the distaff with the bats so that the fibers are perpendicular to the direction of the distaff. It's a short answer to a complicated question, but that's what I can give you right now. So, and with a Navajo spindle, it's a perfect tool for spinning bulky singles, and I always use it to spin singles, but I can spin, it's definitely possible to spin fine singles as well. And I use Navajo spun singles as weft when I weave. So I'll try to spin a bulky one as well. Bulkier, at least. Don't break. Yeah. So let's see if these will behave as they are singles. Yeah, well, not really, but you get the point. To ply on the fly with the support spindle just blew my mind. Wow, it's a question of practice. I'll find the finer single. Stay. Oops. Well, not so much. Okay. So these have untwisted, but you saw the technique, and that they are quite different in thickness. We have these two is just a folded chain plied yarn spun on a supported spindle, and this is the thin single and the bulky single spun on my Navajo spindle, and all these yarns from hand-carded Rolex and a woolen spinning technique of Finull wool. As much as I would have loved to wear something in Finull wool, it's not possible because I would die in the heat of this room. You see me all pink in my face. It's very hot in here. So I'll just show you what I have done, what I use my Finull wool for. This is backwards. This is, it looks very oversized, but it is oversized only in the bodice. The yoke is quite fitted, but still with a very wide neckline. This is a Vera Välimäki design, and it's Finull mixed with some silk. And I think I had a panic attack and attached some Jämtland wool because I was out of Finull wool yarn. So there is some Jämtland towards the end of this. This is a lovely sweater. I use it a lot. It's next to skin material, definitely, with this fineness. We have, oh, I forgot to show you. This is a singles yarn spun on a Navajo spindle that I found in my stash. You can't see very much of this at all. Well, Finull wool singles. I have another Vera Välimäki sweater. I had a Vera Välimäki period a while ago. This is her sides and stripes sweater, also fitted at the top and oversized at the body. The blue yarn is a 3-ply. That is one of the best yarn I've ever spun because it was such a lovely raw material, and I focused on the prep. So this is the 3-ply, a very round yarn, and about a sport weight, I think it was. And the orange stripes are Jämtland wool. So Vera Välimäki sweater. And this is, I made for my daughter many years ago. It's Kate Davies design paper dolls, and it's all Finull wool. Lovely, soft next to skin. So I would use Finull wool for anything that I want to have next to my skin that is fine, that doesn't require hard wear. I have made a pair of mittens in the 2-end knitting technique. I think it was the first real yarn that I ever spun. It was way under spun and underplied, and it broke all the time when I knit. But since I knit them large, I felted them, so they kept together and they lasted quite long. I have mended holes on the thumbs, but I still wear them. But Finull wool is not ideal for hardware material textiles. Esther says, I'm surprised by the halo of the skein. Yes, it's a lovely halo. Beautiful sweaters and yarn. Can you list the sweater designers? Also, do you prefer 3-ply versus 2-ply for sweaters? I would say a 3-ply yarn makes a better, more even structure if I'm knitting stockinette stitch, and it's also perfect for cables, like in the sweater pattern that I published in the spin-off. But for color, stranded color knitting, feral knitting, I would use 2-ply yarn. So it depends on what I'm doing with it. For weaving, I would use, I wouldn't use Finull wool, at least not in the warp. But I use singles as weft. When you wash the yarn, do you treat it in any particular way? It had a beautiful halo. I wash all my wool in water only. So that's what I do. Usually with a fermented swint method, in the summertime at least. So we've looked at some Swedish sheep history. We've looked at the Finull wool, the Finull sheep today, and the wool characteristics of Finull wool. We've looked at how I choose to prepare, spin, and use Finull wool. And that is all I had for this presentation. So I'm opening the Q&A if you have any further questions that you feel have been left unanswered. So fire away if you have any more questions. Some snaps on twack after the yarn has been spun. Is that a question? I'm not sure what you are saying. Could you just elaborate on that, Linnea? Catherine says, thank you so much for this lovely webinar. It was really inspiring. You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Any other questions? I'm also waiting for Linnea to elaborate on what you wrote. And as I said, there is a time lag. 59 people are in the webinar right now. That's lovely. Okay, if you wait down or just soak it, no. I don't weigh it down. I just soak it in a big tub, and perhaps I push it down, but I don't weigh it down when I wash it. Or do you mean? Okay, do you mean washing the yarn or washing the wool? I'll take another question in the meantime. Gunvor says, how does it felt? It felt quite lovely because it was a while since I did felt Finull wool, but since there is a very, very small difference in Finull wool between outer coat and undercoat. And in my experience, outer coat and undercoat fibers felt differently. But since Finull wool is so consistent in the staples and over the body of the sheep, and also that there is such a small difference between outer coat and undercoat, it felt quite evenly and with a very good result. Catherine says, I shall be practicing my chain plying from a butterfly. You have obviously done a lot of it as you make it look so easy. It takes practice, yes. How to handle very short Finull. Finull can be very short, yes. But if I get the rolags tight enough, you can even use a knitting needle to make more of a pony style rolag to get the rolags tight and to be able to draft easier without the fluff just sliding apart. How long does it take you to prepare and spin a jumper worth of wool? I did make some calculations on that a while ago, and I think I did an underestimation. That was from raw dirty fleece to a finished designed sweater. I estimated to 80 hours. I think it's way underestimated. I haven't calculated the prep time in itself, but it does take a lot of time, but it's time worth investing in a garment, because it's what makes the foundation of your yarn. In all these webinars I've done, I show you how I prep and spin and use the breed in question, but the prep is the largest part of the webinar, and that is how I do it at home. This is how I approach wool. I invest a lot of time in the prep to get it good, to get a good foundation for my yarn. Is there also a market for the hand spinners, or is it mostly for industrial use? A lot of hand spinners want to spin Finull wool. There are not. It's not an endangered breed, I think, but it's not the largest breed in Sweden either. It is quite popular for both hand spinners and industries, but you can definitely get Finull wool. I mean, the the spinning mills, I think they want larger quantities. So for a smaller sheep farm, they may not be able to send their wool to a spinning mill because it's too low a quantity in the quantities. I'm not sure about this. I'm not a sheep farmer, but it is, you can definitely get Finull wool as a hand spinner. I've never seen you use wool combs. Well, yes, I have. Are the wools you favor more suitable for carding? And what is the brand of cards you are using? And why do you like them? That's a few questions. Are the wools you favor more suitable for carding? I use all kinds of wool, and I do in the previous webinars, I've both combed and carded, so I think it's 50-50 which method I use. So I don't have a preference, I think. What is the brand of your cards you are using, and why do you like them? These are Kromsky cards. I like them because they have a nice angle between the angle between the carding wood part and the handle. So they are quite ergonomical, and I like the feeling of the handle. And some people prefer a rounder shape of the card and use a different carding technique. I like these. I like the flat style. I can't really say anything more intelligent than that. Linnea says, yes, the yarn. Okay, washing the yarn. Sometimes people smack the finished yarn against a table to make it bloom, giving it a halo. Yes, that's what I do. I soak it with just an organic shampoo and rinse, of course, and then I go loose on the floor and whack it on the kitchen floor. Karen says, do you know anything about the Finull in Denmark? Have fine grey, but seen white that clearly had dual coats. But I love Finull Leicester. I know nothing about Danish breeds, I'm sorry. And the Finull sheep in Sweden don't have, they don't come in grey. They are white, black, or brown. But they're not dual coats in that sense. They have, of course, both outer coat and undercoat, but they're very similar in the fiber circumference and the fiber quality. Thank you so much, says Katrin. Titti, what kind of Finull wool is your favorite to use? Number of crimp per 3 centimeters, staple length, defined staple or not, etc. I think I prefer, I mean, this is the grown ewe. Finull lamb's wool is even finer in the staples, and you can get quite frustrated after a while, since if you prepare lamb's wool of Finull sheep, because they are so fine, and usually, are they shorter? I don't know. I don't remember really, because it was a while ago. But I with Finull wool, I tend to go towards grown ewes. But let me see if I have. And it depends on what I'm making, of course, as always. It's a context that will decide as well. Finull sheep, as you know, Titi, they are quite consistent over the body of the sheep. But here are some locks that are a bit more to the wavy side. I don't really know. I'll have to think about that one. I'll get back to you. But I think I prefer the defined staples like these, because they are fine and small, but the defined staple is something that I can see and distinguish and make some sort of sense of. But these are just so lovely locks. I get happy when I see these. This is my home wall. So it's almost 6 p.m. Are there any more questions? One last question, says Catherine. Shoot. I'll fondle my wool while you write your question. Is it a sign of bad quality if the tips break off or are weak? I wouldn't say that, not necessarily at least. But I mean, if you look at this, since the staples are so fine, the tips are even finer. And that's just my experience, that if I flick card the staples as my teasing method, any risk of broken tips will go to the flick card. There can of course be bad quality as well if there is a malnutrition or something like that. But what I mean when I say that the tips can break, it's due to the very fine wool that is I mean, there is more wear on the tip than on the cut end, so it's a natural thing, I would say. But it's a good question. Thank you, says Eleonora. I was really disappointed with the clone forest. Yes, I understand that. It can definitely be bad quality, but for this fleece, definitely not. Thank you. So, if there are not any more questions, thank you so much for coming. It was lovely to have you. This was the last webinar for this spring. This room gets even hotter during the summer. I'll be back with more webinars towards September or October. I'm looking forward to that already. I have a few breeds in my mind to talk more about then. Thank you so much for coming. Happy spinning. Stay safe. Bye.